Stand up for yourself, and I'll back you up. These problems don't solve themselves. I'll tell you what, instead of would or could, I think you should. Draw a line in the sand and stand your ground. It's for your own good.
In the continuum of care, we have a continuity of the plan of treatment with the person who is dealing with substance use disorders. And the question is, with this person being in such a state of flux, who's there to help them to make the right decisions, to stay up and follow through with tasks that are oriented to their plan of treatment? Well, the answer is the family can do that role, and we want to welcome you to the Voice of the Families in Addiction. My name is Roy Poyan, and I am the Director of Families Impacted by Opioids. You'll find our materials on our website at familiesimpactedbyopioids.com. And this, of course, is being broadcast on selected podcast sites such as Spotify, iHeart, Pandora, and iPod. I want to thank you for taking the time today to take a look at some of the areas that I think are quintessential to the success of lifelong recovery. And let me frame this first in the sense that there are three areas that we're going to address in today's discussions. The first is that the family is a system, and we've identified that in previous podcasts, so there's no real reason to go back into that in great depth. But it's a matter of moving individual parts. And one of the parts is this person who's dealing with substance use disorders. But because it's a part of the family system and in the relationships, the family dynamic, it actually, that brain disease becomes a part of what is their reality based on the behavior of that person. I mean, let's face it, if they had asthma, we wouldn't find the family coming apart because of that, because it wouldn't have the behavior that we see that's associated with substance use disorder disease. But because that behavior is there, we're required to address both the behavior and the disease and the person. So the family being a system is one area. The other area is the person and where they are in their journey of lifelong recovery. So Shooting Star Families is a program that's provided by Families Impacted by Opioids, where we help to educate the families about the different key issues they're likely to face during this journey. We know what they are. You need to know what they are. And then what we're asking is that this is just the starting point on each of these 32 topics. In other words, you'll take a topic like childhood trauma, you'll see what we presented, we've got you thinking about it now, and we'd like for you to go further with a counselor and with other professional services in your area to assist you. So ours is really just a starting point of the discussion with yourselves, with the family, and then with professional services in your area. In doing this, we need to identify that the third characteristic of what we'd like to discuss is that a lot of people have poured a lot of professional, high-quality review, science studies, and written articles. Best practices have been developed, and empirically proven studies have been administrated in order to identify the accuracy of what it is that we're proposing and saying. What we say in these podcasts and in our Fentanyl and Families in Harm's Way TV production and in our books, the Family Solution Finder Learning Series, 32 key issues that families are likely to face, and the workbooks, none of that material is ours. All of it's generated off of informations that professionals have published and have made available in the public domain. We're just trying to make sense of it for you. So let's do just that. Let's start to make sense. Here's what doesn't make sense, and I'll only spend a time on the knots for just a brief minute. But the problem with the knots, N-O-T apostrophe S, is they create knots, K-N-O-T-T-S. And with that in mind, the knots tend to tie us up, and we get to be hung up on what we can't do, what we won't be allowed to do, what we don't know, all the don'ts and nots. This journey is full of those, and they might be considered obstacles, but really they're not. They're more, oh, there I go with that word again. They really aren't, because what we do have is knowledge, and it's available to you. And I wanted to just point out, as we get started, 2 books that I think would be of interest if you chose to pick them up. If you're seeing this on video, I'm holding it up, but for those that are on audio, the book is The Family Therapy of Drug Abuse and Addiction. It's written by 3 authors, M. Duncan Stanton, Thomas C. Todd, and Associates. And what this book will do is it will take you through how we approach the family in therapy. Wouldn't it be a good idea if you knew how the industry has structured itself into something that you're going to participate in? I don't think there's many places that you're going to find this as a resource. So let us just take you through some of the table of contents topics. What Stanton and Todd and Hurd are doing is they're saying, listen, this is known to us. And in this book, as clinicians, we want you to identify the structure of providing families therapy that are dealing with substance use disorder. So we're taking family therapy and we're breaking it into a very selected topic, which is useful for you. But in this book, you'll see, now this book isn't written for the families. I want to caution you on that. It's written for the people that are going to set up and run a family therapy concept or service or program for you, the family. But in doing that, we can identify kind of the design of the research that they're using, how they're going to go about in terms of creating a collaborative relationship. Collaborative is really important. In every aspect as a family, you should be thinking collaborative and continuity, okay? And that closes the information gathering gap of, well, where do I put this? Well, it's either in those 2 critical areas. You're either talking about the collaboration with others or the continuity of what you're doing as it attaches to the next stage of moving forward. So getting the addicted family to agree to be involved, can you believe that they've actually have to write that as a section of, if you're going to start a family therapy model in, let's say, Marion, Ohio, then you need to consider that you're going to have as part of your model, how to get the addicted family to agree, okay, to allow you to contact them. In other words, the person that's dealing with this has to give them permission to contact the family, all right? And how do you go about doing that? And then using that initial contact as a way of kind of assessing the family. So now what they're doing is they're saying, okay, new family therapy model group in Marion, Ohio, you're going to have to show basically how to get the family to show up for an intake interview. That's amazing that we would have to go through such deliberate, steps in order to help a family. But they do. Believe it or not, I'm speaking as myself being a family too. We're not an easy group to get to come in, okay? And that's unfortunate because we should be running to their doors when invited. Then they start to talk about the principal techniques of resistance. So this is them saying, what do we do when a family resists to be involved in getting educated? What do we do when the person resists in terms of getting the family involved? Now, I have to take a liberty here. I'm assuming that you would agree with me on the fact that that's amazing that, clinicians need to take the time to create the steps of the model for handling resistance of people that it's so obvious if they get involved, they're going to benefit from this. But they do. They run into it that much, that often. I have a question for you as you're listening to this. Are you one of those families? I mean, really, are you one of the families that sit there and say, I don't think I want to be involved in all this. This is too much work. I'll tell you what, I've had clients that I have said to them, I've talked with the treatment center. I've asked them about what types of family therapy they use. They're using what is SAMHSA's and NIH's recommended Bowen family therapy or multidimensional family therapy or multifamily therapy. These are excellent models. They prove out to have a fantastic success rate. And I want you to get in touch with this group now that your loved one is being treated by them over the next couple of weeks, because they have a program for you. I can't begin to tell you how many times the family has said, sure, we'll do that, and they don't do it. Would somebody please call me and help me? I mean, really, would somebody please call me and help me to understand why would a family not, sit there and say, that sounds like the right thing to do? Okay, well, then, we start to wonder, if you're not willing to let us help you, then for those that are willing to help you, we'll just push you to the side, and good luck with that, because that means you're going to figure this out all on your own. And this is way too complicated for you to take that position. But, if you choose to. So the people that we're going to talk to today are those people, and hopefully it's you, are those people who sit there and say, yeah, you know what? I want to be game on with this. I'm tired of getting kicked in the back of my head every time Bill does something that's related to the path of this addiction journey. And they, meaning the industry, knew it, and I didn't. And I seem to be, as a family member, the only one in this room or in this sphere that doesn't understand it, and yet I could. So enough said about all that. So they get into crisis resolution. Hey, you think you're going to go through some crises? Yeah, I guarantee you. Do you think you might want to know how to create a resolution for those crises and have that as a coping skill before the crisis comes to be? Yeah, actually, I think that'd be brilliant. How about, things that are motivating? How about things that have to do with work or crime? Or, overall, let's say you're handling it, the family's handling an adolescent and not necessarily an adult. A lot of families handle adults because when you talk about alcoholism and other types of long-lasting addictions, it's not uncommon to find somebody in the age of 54, that's a part of the family that's, having a drinking problem, and it's a significant drinking problem at that. So with that in mind, these different spheres, these different characteristics are all addressed in this book titled The Family Therapy of Drug Abuse and Addiction. There's another book that I'd like you to consider picking up, and I'll just show the viewing audience what that looks like. And what that does is it helps you to identify how does a clinician and counselors approach the family solution for substance use disorders. We're going to show you how the clinicians and the counselors approach this topic. Don't you feel that would be good, as long as it's not too clinical, don't you think that would be a good thing for you to have a general understanding of? Well, I can assure you, because within the first 15 pages, they're sitting there saying, we're talking about the whole ecology of influence. Well, what does that mean? There are a lot of people that are influencing this person's life, okay? It's a Venn diagram with multiple circles overlapping to create that center point of interest. You've got extended family, you've got immediate family, you've got your local community, you've got your state and national and world kind of influences going on. You've got your normal daily life and all the experiences of that going on. This person is being inundated by influencers. Well, that could be, you don't want them to be isolated, but that could be a troubling thing, because a lot of these players aren't necessarily informed as to what your loved one is going through. They won't know what stage they're at, mild, moderate, or severe. They won't know about they have a dual diagnosis. In other words, they're actually handling this from a mental health perspective at the same time that they're dealing with cravings of addiction that has, changed the wiring in their brain, creating a substance use disorder disease. So, and it could be on top of that, their third assessment. Remember, we said get 3 assessments: get a medical, a mental health, and an addiction assessment. And each assessment is going to have a stage. What stage are each of those? And each stage, by a medical protocol and treatment algorithms, will have the ability not just for the clinician to bill on a billing code, but also, more importantly, a plan of treatment algorithm that's associated with that diagnosis at that stage. I hope this is starting to sink in, because we need you here. We need you here, okay? And it's not something that, you should be taking lightly. Like, yeah, I'll check in every now and then, and see, what I can do to help. No, that's not going to be the best way to handle this. Both feet, game in. Let's learn it. It's here to learn now. Okay, we presented this in podcasts. We presented this in TV episodes. We have PowerPoint presentations with voiceover. We've got 4 learning series workbooks on Amazon and are download free as PDFs on our website. So there's really no reason to say I can't find the information I want to learn. That's been mapped out for you at Families Impacted by Opioids through the Family Solution Finder Learning Series, through the Shooting Star Families. So what we're trying to do here is to build your understanding of the context of the disease. Well, why would we do that? Number 1, to save you, okay? Number 2, to save the family from breaking apart. And it will break apart if you leave this alone and let it run its course, I guarantee you. And then the third one is to help the person, the individual. So what drives all this? Well, we've kind of identified that before. We know exactly what the path is of this individual. And at each stage, the family has a role to play. Well, there's something like 18 stages to this. Do you mean that we've got 18 different times that we've got a role to play? Trust me, you got a lot more than that, okay? Because we've already identified 32 key issues that you as a family will be impacted by this disease, okay? Where you can't even avoid it. It's going to hit you. And we've identified that in the other series, which is a part of course, our 32 key issue learning series. So with that in mind, let's go to their journey. Let's go to the list. And with addiction, we typically start off with experimentation. So, you may become understanding that in experimentation, we'll actually have to identify, okay, what is the family's role in being involved in the experimentation of this? Well, obviously you're not encouraging them. Or are you? Could it be that without even knowing it, you might be doing things that are enabling them to use it? Could it be that in your parenting style, you're not necessarily, paying close enough attention to their life? You see, we're all pretty much the same in one way. We all have a desire. We have a desire for the love of God in our lives. It's just a natural, it's the way we're built. We want God in our lives. You can say, oh, I don't believe in God, oh, I don't like it. You get down to the core of it, you probably do, okay? Because we're all built the same in that regard. So when we're looking for love, we have a tendency to say, I want my father, my biological father, to give me that love that I desire. Well, they could try. But if you're thinking deep inside your eros that the love that I really desire is a love from God, but I'm trying to get something that's like that from my father and mother. That's very reasonable. It's very reasonable, because that's part of the role of a parent in a family dynamic. But what if they're not understanding that role? Well, then it probably means you're not being satisfied with the type of love that you were hoping to receive, the type of attention, the type of reinforcing of your values, of your beliefs, of your self-esteem, of a safe environment. I mean, we could go down a laundry list of what's involved in the dynamic of a family system. This whole list of everything that this person is going to go through is actually a list of everything that the family can help with just by being a really good family. So with that in mind, in this particular list, we're talking about addiction as an experiment, addiction as regular use. So they go from, I tried it, oh, that felt pretty good. That next day, they think I'm going to try it again. And then the next day is risk-taking. Okay, I think I'll try it again. Here's something that's coming up that's so obvious. Maybe it's obvious to me. I don't know if it's obvious to others. But we've got this lunar eclipse that's going to take place on April like 8th or something. And Northeast Ohio, actually Avon, is like the epicenter to watch this from. And Ohio has just recently legalized marijuana. So I'm sitting here thinking, oh, are you not telling me that a whole bunch of people are going to possibly try marijuana, in and around that day, and realize that they like it, or come back to it and realize that they miss it, or have been on the wagon and now they've dropped off and they just tried it for a little bit and they're back to regular use? That's very plausible. Okay, prom is another type. So we got seminal moments in our life, or we run into something and we've been living in a world of abstinence and sobriety, and all of a sudden we just feel that for this trigger it's too much, and they go back to drinking and using. So now they're going back to regular use. Okay, so where does the family fall into regular use? Because we know that the next step is risky behavior. Are you paying attention to this person? This is typically where the family starts to say, I think, but I don't know. I've heard that many times. I think, but I don't know. Then ask. Okay, you're a family member, you're allowed. You're probably one of the few people in their lives that can sit there and say, hey, Johnny, are you drinking? And if so, how much? Okay, and start to get engaged at that point. Because the next part is risk-taking. Now they're using it so often that it's impacting their homework, it's impacting their schoolwork, it's impacting their relationships, and they know it, but they're still willing to take the risk. So that's why we refer to this as risk-taking. Okay, they absolutely know that this is hurting them, but they're still willing to do it. And that typically folds into full addiction. Now they are going to do it, and it's full steam ahead, and guns out the window to defend the fact that we're going to do it, and nobody's going to stop us. So the question is, where are you as a family? Because at this stage, we would like you to be doing a couple of things. We'd like you to be taking seminars 1 through 5 and identifying the information, because each one has 3 learning objectives to it. In seminars 1 through 5, you're going to learn about the family and this situation and things that you should start to think about doing. By the way, one of the things the family can do, and they should do, is get into family therapy. And you might think, no, we do that after the fact, after it's become a real problem. We don't do that just when we think it's a problem. Yes, you do with this. And I just told you why. We know exactly the path that you're on. And it's not you that's on it, it's them that's on it. So the question is, well, then why would we feel we need to do it if it's them that has the problem? Well, it's been empirically proven that families that seek therapy, especially early on in this process, significantly dropped. Now, this is them seeking the therapy and getting the therapy. And we're only talking about maybe 12, maybe 15 sessions. We're not talking about 3 years of life, sitting on a couch. But with these new modalities and models that are proven out to be very successful, it's been stated that you could drop the likelihood of their usage by up to 75%. By up to 75% is in your favor if you, the family members, go into family therapy during the time frame of these, from addiction experimentation to regular use to risk-taking to now they're dependent upon it to full addiction. That's the time that you should be going into family therapy. You could do it later on, but if you do that, you may actually have a chance to stem this off, okay? Don't do it and see what happens. Good luck with that. And the only reason that I'm being kind of a snippety about it is because I'm taking the time to come down here to the Brunswick area television studios to sit down with you and have this conversation. It's that important. I mean, it's about 3 degrees outside right now. It wasn't easy to get here, but that's on me. That's my gift to you. But the fact is, this is important for you to realize that getting into family therapy is your responsibility, it's your role, it's your love, it's your family, it's your system, and this has generational impact. You don't take care of this, then your grandchildren and their grandchildren will carry the burden of that. Now, there is no shame on you regarding this, so where's the final but, or however. There is no but or however. You get to write how you write this script. The script is the history of your family. My question is, how do you want it to read? Well, we knew about the fact that he was trying and he was smoking pot. Okay, what'd you do about it? Well, we didn't do anything about it, I mean, it's just pot. Well, I'm sorry, but I don't mean to, sound redundant here, but pot's pretty potent these days. And it's a high that gets them very close to what the next type of drug would feel like. So it used to be you'd smoke a little marijuana, you get stoned, you get hungry, you'd come down in about 3 hours, and that was it. You didn't smoke pot for another 2 or 3 weeks. That's not what this stuff is. This is designer marijuana. It's designed for you to use it a lot because they figured out the different types of elements inside these buds, and they've hybrided the stems and the horticulture of this marijuana plant now. So for us to think otherwise is really silly. So with that in mind, what are you going to do then when you're coming into this sphere and you're looking at it and you're saying, let's go to detox? Well, how did we get there? Okay. Typically, there's 2 things that happen. They have an overdose, and they've overdosed so many times that they're sick of overdosing, and the family's not engaged in their life, and they decide to go into detox. I mean, either way, the decision is theirs. It's always theirs. Or a family member kind of stepped out of their comfort zone and said, hey, I'm not going to sit here and watch you do this to yourself, and I'm going to drag you by your hair, and we're going to go down, and we're going to go to a detox center. Now, that doesn't make sense to really do that, but emotionally, I'm sure that's what you want to do. By the way, don't do that. It's only a colloquial. But with that in mind, you do want to start to only address, when they're in full addiction, the conversation should be all about the next stage. That's called the continuum of care. It's actually the first part. Your first part was you cared enough to go and seek a family therapist, which helped you to organize yourself and strengthen yourself and your coping skills. You will see that that is the case. They've got some really great ways to guide you into that. So don't have to think that you have to figure this out. A good therapist will take you there. But with that in mind now, you're moving into, you're more stronger and you're able to, with confidence, have these conversations. And now you're willing to step up to the plate and say, I don't mind taking the coat off my jacket so you don't have to step in this puddle and you can walk across and get up on the curb and on the sidewalk being detox. So now with that in mind, you're more or less learning tactics of moving them, kind of like 5 stages of change: pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, action, and then maintenance. That's Prochaska de Clementi's theory on transformational change. And where you're stepping into the pre-contemplation, they don't think they've got a problem. And you're trying to move them into, you do have a problem and you need to address it. Well, that would be contemplation. Now they realize it's all about them and they're thinking. They have to be the one that acts and makes these decisions. So now they're sitting there thinking, well, maybe I do have a problem. You would have, by this design of what we're talking to you today about, is you're the case management company, okay? You're the social worker because you're the family and you're the only one that's going to follow them outside of the brick and mortar acute care services. In other words, all of these services will end. And the question is, okay, well, how do they get from the end of these services to the 5-year marker where they drop below 15% likelihood of relapse? So in other words, they maintain sobriety and abstinence for 5 years. Well, a lot of that has to do with the family, okay? When the family is engaged, the percentages go way, way up for success. I mean, really way up for success. And with that in mind, when we're talking about detox and taking them into, that detox 3 stages, be nice if you knew what the 3 stages are. We teach that to you in our learning seminars. You could go on YouTube and just write out detox programs. You can read the website of detox programs, and they'll say, this is what we do. But that's not what we want you to do. What we want you to do is we want you to get on either SAMHSA or some kind of search engine and find a detox place. Find 3 of them in your area that will do detox admissions for you, and call them and say, listen, this is what I'm dealing with. You don't have to give them your name, just, my child is addicted to methamphetamine, and I don't know how to get them down here to get together with you. Have a pen and paper out and write down what they tell you, and then call another one and do the same thing. Have a pen and paper out. Matter of fact, I'd start a spiral binder and start to write these things down. Who did I talk to? When did I talk to? What's their number? What's their email? What's their website address? And then, kind of like create a directory, and then put the comments of what they instructed you to do. So you could share that with other people. You don't have to embellish on it. You've actually have it written down. This is what the detox center, I called 3 of them. Good for you. All right, you're really participating. You're really showing family love here. And now what you're doing is you're also being a case manager and a coordinator of care. So now you're starting to get through the detox phase, and you want them to successfully transfer to the treatment. Okay? Well, aren't the clinicians handling all this? Trust me. Between detox and treatment center, we see it. They'll sit there and say, nope, feeling better, I'm leaving. And they don't see this as a continuity of care. I'm kind of like drawing those words out, continuity of care. And I'm doing that on purpose. It's as if it's in italics on a written page. The fact is, it's a special word. The continuity of care is something that you actually contribute to them. And now they can benefit from the work that you've done because you care about them. But because you also know their next step is a treatment center. Okay? What do you know about a treatment center? Well, you can learn that through our Family Solution Finder Learning Series, the 32 key issues. One of them, I think is like number 12, is treatment centers, intervention. So you could also look up on websites and see how treatment centers describe themselves. But that's not enough, because we want you to call the treatment centers and say, I'm going to be recommending detox for my loved one, and I want to make sure that they continue their care by going into treatment center. That bridge is like a river, and you don't want them falling into the water and floating away. So the more you know about the treatment center. So now the conversation is, well, Jack, what are they going to do next? Really? I mean, is that what you just asked the person? When you could have sat there and said, okay, Jack, the next step is that you'll be enrolling into a treatment center, and your clinicians will help you to decide if it should be a full hospital, a partial hospital, or an intensive patient, an outpatient program, which requires you to show up 5 times or 4 times a week for 3 hours, mostly group sessions. And this is what they do in the group sessions, because you know this stuff now, okay? Because you are not just a family member anymore. You are a case management care coordination company, pseudo. And with that in mind, you're now able to tell them things that they didn't even know. Or they've been through this before, don't tell me. But the fact of the matter is, when they went through it before, you didn't know it. And they didn't tell you enough that you would even know it from their experience. So don't count on that happening. I hate to say this, but you're the dumbest person in the room at the beginning part of all this. Kind of so are they. But you shouldn't be anymore. Not if you're listening to this podcast. You have the ability to get smart, and I really, really want to see you do that. That's the whole purpose of everything that we're doing here. And with that in mind, we're talking about the treatment center, which gets very involved. But that's just a part of the continuity of care. Well, you might sit there and say, Roy, what's driving the continuity of care? The treatment plan. Okay, what's driving the treatment plan? The diagnosis. Well, how are we going to confirm what's the best treatment plan? The staging and the algorithms that are associated with it. Oh, so this is kind of a connect the dots thing for the clinicians. Well, I wouldn't dumb it down that far, but in a certain way it is. It is for you and me, because we're not clinicians. But for the most part, we are the one that's encouraging this person with words that matter in the continuity of care. We're echoes of smart thinking, of right decision making. We're not ambivalent and sitting there saying, well, what did he tell you? Oh, he told me this. He told you what you wanted you to know. She probably told you nothing, okay? Because they don't want you getting into their life. That's not an option. And you're not getting into their life. You're getting into your life. I'm asking you to save yourself here. The boundary, the fence, the nice side of the fence is facing you. The boundary is a fence that's built around you to keep you in the boundary. You're not putting a boundary around them. Your boundaries are that you will know everything that seems reasonable for you to understand ahead of time before it happens. Well, how can we do that? I just showed it to you. That's how you do that. We know that it's detox, and then it goes to treatment. And then you sit there and say, okay, well, let's say they get to the end of treatment. What's next? Well, we know that. It's aftercare. And that's kind of a new concept of the treatment centers realize that 2 things. One is that their program is brick and mortar. It's acute care. We reset the bone. We put a cast on it. We gave them crutches. We said, don't lean on it. It's weak. And then we let them out of the hospital. Okay. But in this case, we let them out of the treatment center, and they are weak, and they do lean on it, and they do break the bone again because they lean on it. Excuse me. So with that in mind now, we're going to ask of the family to help strengthen this process, because this is another river. They go from the end of treatment center, and hopefully they haven't, against medical advice, AMA'd the way and didn't, we don't want them leaving the program before it's over. If they leave the program before it's over, then stop telling me and anybody else that they went to treatment. They didn't. They didn't complete the program. It's all void, okay? Because if they leave early, they probably weren't listening all the way up to then anyhow. So people who get it don't leave AMA, against medical advice. They finish the program. Now they've probably already started NAAA while they were in the IOP. Oh boy, a lot of acronyms here. But with that in mind, they're moving into aftercare. And you can sit there and say, well, I don't really know much about aftercare. Well, I think that's true for a lot of people because there's a couple of different definitions. That's how new it is. It's only just recently become a billable event to a payer that you can say, well, they're in an aftercare program and we want to get reimbursed for providing it. And this is how many times we meet. This is our proof that we met and to the payer. And we understand that we have eligibility and the benefit will last for, let's say a year. I'm not saying that's the way it is, but let's say it's a year. So with that in mind, the aftercare starts to kick in. Well, what all is involved in aftercare? Well, this is another river. And you're the one that's going to lay down, your understanding for yourself of what is this next river. This is the continuity of care, and you need to know it. Okay? So with that in mind, we're going to cross over this to aftercare, and you're going to know what is aftercare. Well, how are you going to do that? Well, we kind of already said it. It's like community mapping. You're going to go and you're going to call groups that provide aftercare before they get finished with the IOP. And for your own edification, you're going to find out everything there is to know about the aftercare program. You might even go down and meet with the clinician that runs the aftercare program. You might even be allowed to see an aftercare program that's being used for others. Okay? So that you have a real hands-on understanding. And when you mention to your loved one while they're still, in IOP, and the social worker's coming in and saying, okay, Jerry, or Donna, we're gonna be discharging you from our services in a week, and we want to get you ready for that. And here's the aftercare program. Hopefully, you've already echoed your understanding of the aftercare program, which helps them to realize my mom, dad, sister, and brother have an understanding of where I'm going next. Do you know how much easier it is when you've got that much care of the people who's, hopefully eventually you'll be able to get back to? Now, this is a get-out clause. This is close to, and the clinicians will not like me saying this is close to a clinical cop-out. When they sit there and they tell us, well, they really don't have any family. I'm sitting here thinking, what do you think, they were born in a petri dish? Of course they've got a family. Their family may not be engaged, but they've got a family. Unless they've all passed away, which could be possible, and I'm so sorry if that's the case. That's really they need even more support from an extended family, what they define as family. But in any case, we need to make the effort to bring in the family. Well, how would we do that? Remember we started out with those two books? There are clinical models that are being developed, and these are more and more coming into the marketplace, where groups are starting to realize that family therapy of drug abuse and addiction is really, really, really helpful. So with that in mind, in the aftercare program, moving into that, that's more of we're going to be doing aftercare for the first year. Oh, okay, but in the recovery resources, remember, we're moving into this next phase from aftercare. We know that there are 3 phases. And we also know that in the recovery phase 1, first 18 months, it's a very volatile time for this person. They really, really need help in fending off triggers and environments and stresses and things like that. I'm not saying put on kid gloves, but I'm saying this is a different way. They're in a different place. They won't be there for long, like maybe 18 to 24 months, but they are there. And for you to ignore that is no different than going all the way back up to addiction experimentation, all the way through to full addiction, and saying to them, we're not going to pay attention to this. You've already been through treatment. You don't really need us. Baloney. They really need you now. because now they're back into their real life and they don't have the protections of an IOP. They don't have that centristic like grouping and group therapy and camaraderie of people with alike situations around them. They've got more and more people that don't understand them in their life. That's dangerous, okay, for them. And it's a tricky minefield. They really need you. This is part of the continuity of care that you are helping to manage that environment around. So with that in mind, now the question is, Roy, do they have this continuum of treatment plan? Well, they did while they were in the IOP, that's for sure. Brick and mortar, managed care is paying for it, or somebody's paying for it. They go to get discharged, the discharge planner sits down and says, okay, Jerry, this is what you need to do. You need to get and continue your AA or your NA. You need to continue with your mental health therapy and, watch your triggers and get your environment, get back in your life, find a hobby. I mean, they give you a whole bunch of things to do. And then they say, bye. Whoa, wait a second. Remember, I'm the one with the crutches and the don't lean on it too hard or it'll break person leaving the acute care setting. That's what this is. So knowing this now, because you've listened to this podcast, we're going to ask that you get involved with the fact that if there isn't a continuity of the continuum of the treatment plan, that you kind of pseudo make one up in the sense of, we know that he should be, and I'll give you a couple of elements. Medical assisted therapy, game on. It helps to avoid the triggers and the cravings mostly. And that helps them to give a good, more balanced mind. But that's only for the purpose of them receiving the continuation of mental health therapy. Just doing MAT without the mental health therapy makes no sense at all. And a good family won't allow that to happen. They'll lean into it and say, no, he should be receiving some kind of behavioral therapy to help him, because that's what's going to change the neurons. That's what's going to change the firing. That's what's going to change his cognitive behaviors and how he responds to things cognitively. So just the drug itself doesn't do that for you, obviously. And so with that in mind, now we're sitting there saying, well, this is a much less defined area, unfortunately. If this was diabetes or asthma, they've got a disease management model. The endocrinologist would be seeing the diabetic. They'd have them on a continuity, a continuum of a treatment plan, and it would be, come on back in. We'll take blood. We'll make sure you're taking the right milligrams. You're compliant to your pharmacy regimen. None of that's done in this case. It could be, but for some reason, probably billing and medical not getting along with mental health industries, I don't know, but it's not there. And maybe we'll design one. Maybe what we should do is design it so the family runs it for those families that want to, so that they can proactively say, listen, you don't have a model for this chronic disease, but in a pseudo way, we're going to make one up until you finally get it as an industry and start to kick in with some dollars and smarts, because that's what this will take. But when you start to include the family and the incredible increase of successful lifelong recovery that creates, and you start to include the continuity of the care and the continuum of a treatment plan that currently isn't there, and that continuum of a treatment plan goes all the way up to 5 years, boy, you've really increased the odds. Am I asking a lot for the family? No, you don't get off that easy. This is just part of being a good family, okay? So go ahead and pat yourself on the back if you're going to do this, and you should be doing it, and I hope you do it. I would love, you don't want to reward me? Send me your information on how you're handling this. That would be the greatest reward for me in terms of being able to hear your stories of struggle and how you handle it. If you want some, some guidance as to where to look, give me a call. we pick up the phone, 440-385-7605. Happy to talk with what you're looking at and give you some options to go forward with, to look into. But with that in mind, what we want to do is we want to see you managing the continuity of care, because that is what's really going to make a difference in this person's life going forward. And the way that we do that is we get smart ahead of time that smart is needed. You don't have to take a whole bunch of course material to do that, okay? We've outlined some great places to get started. If you need any guidance, ask to be enrolled, call us. We'll enroll you in the Shooting Star program. It's at no cost to you, and you'll be able to really learn up everything that we just talked about, all those rivers that you're going to cross and help this person with. We have the material for you to be able to understand as a starting point of understanding what it is that you can be doing as a family. So with that in mind, we've got the 3 stages of recovery, which we briefly went into, but we've gone into extensively in other presentations. And then we have the possibility of a relapse. Remember, there's somewhere around 18 months out tends to be a very, like, somebody will sit there and say, oh, Roy, you know, I'm so proud of Jerry or Donna. You know, they've been in recovery and abstinence for 23 months, almost 2 years. I don't think they're ever going to go back. And I cringe and I think, you know, unless you're involved, you know, they might, okay? They might, unfortunately. It'll probably be a bump, you know, it won't be maybe a full-blown, he's back to full addiction and he can't seem to get himself out of it. A bump means they did it, they messed up, they relapsed, they got back into the, you know, treatment center, and they're back at it again. That, I hate to say it, but that's a pretty normal path. They go through a couple of bumps and then finally it connects. By the way, an overwhelming majority of people, I mean really overwhelming majority of people, achieve lifelong successful recovery, meaning they're managing their chronic disease. The disease never goes away. They're just learning how to manage their life. And the family, hopefully, is learning how to manage their life too. Now, here's another important point. At some point, it may be really hard to see it when you're in the first phases of addiction, those first 5 steps. But the fact is, at some point, they're going to want to, and you are very likely going to want to reunite, re-get together. So with that in mind, if you haven't done any family therapy, you probably haven't had a place to park this anger, resentment, disappointment, fear. This is all an element of trauma. It is post-traumatic stress disorder trauma for the family, experiencing a loved one with all of their behaviorisms and how they handle themselves during the addiction process. And then you've also got a whole new set of anticipation and things that go on while they're in recovery, especially the early stages of recovery. You know, the sleepless nights that you'll experience, the anger in your family, the arguments you have. A lot of it will stem from, he's in recovery, we're not quite sure when the shoe's going to drop off. But if you're in family therapy, you can have a therapist that can help you to deal with that, because there are ways of creating a resilience. It's called resiliency, in terms of what you can do to put everything in their proper context. So as you start to look through relapse, and you've got the 3 different phases of relapse, the self-care, they set off a flag. That's considered a relapse. The second phase is mental. The mental is where they start to romance the idea, or maybe it wasn't so bad, or I'd like to go back and see my old friends. That's a mental relapse. And then the physical is when they actually do it. How do you see yourself in this? And I hope that this podcast has been some help. You are involved in the continuity of care. You have a role for this. And because you're taking this podcast and we're starting to get to know each other, I don't know if you like me or not, but I love you, or I wouldn't be here. But the fact is, I care enough about you, and I hope you do the same for yourself, to get educated, get organized, and get networked. I want you to get on our website. I want you to take these courses, okay? And then I want you to begin to learn on specific issues, those that you need to learn more about, especially now that you know their stages of this disease. Addiction experimentation, addiction regular use, addiction risk-taking, addiction dependence, and then full addiction. Moving into detox, you cross the river, the continuity of care. Detox phase 1, detox phase 2, detox phase 3. Then you're crossing the river. Continuity of care, family, the treatment center. Hospitalization, partial hospitalization, or an intensive outpatient program, 16 weeks. Then another river. Continuity of care, again, aftercare program, okay? Aftercare programs sometimes include a recovery housing, which would be great, because then they're continuing to be around people who are in a like situation, and sometimes that can last up to a year. So recovery housing, God bless them for what they do. These are people who really step out of the frame of their own lives to provide housing, and they get certified, and it in itself is not treatment, but it in itself creates a very safe place for these people to then start to acclimate themselves to how they're going to conduct their new life. We want them to create a new life, okay? That's a lot of what this is about. Then again, family, guess what? You're going to create a new life too. I guarantee you, don't try and go back to the old ways of doing things. They're gone. That's what this disease does to you. You recall in our very first presentations, we said everything is going to change, and it does. It doesn't go back. But sometimes, and very quite often, the new is like this really beautiful expression of the suffering that happened during, and the way you worked through it as a family, and the way that you included your spiritual faith practices and support groups and the new friends that you made. And the old friends that really weren't really friends kind of sloughed off and faded away. But now you're in a new place, and I can almost assure you, it's going to be a stronger you, a better you, and generationally, a family that has grown, and that gets passed on because everybody will have seen how you handled this, and because you handled it this well with what we're suggesting, that now becomes the new norm. The fact is, when people in our family are hurt, we show up, we get smart, we get organized, and we get networked. We don't back away. Step forward. Don't back away. Reload. Don't put your gun back in the holster. The fact is, there's fighting to be done, and you're here for the fight. And it's a good fight. It's a fight for love and caring and family. I want to thank you very much for taking the time, for joining us at the Voice of Families and Addiction. Once again, my name is Roy Poyan. You will find us on the internet, on our website, at familiesimpactedbyopioids.com, and please feel free to call us. We pick up the phone every time, 440-385-7605.
Stand up for yourself, and I'll back you up. 'Cause problems don't solve themselves. I'll tell you what, instead of would or could, I think you should draw a line in the sand and stand your ground. It's for your own good.